This training is EBI, which stands for Emergency Behavior Intervention, the angry child and temper tantrums. Today we're going to cover de-escalating an angry child, understanding where temper tantrums come from or what helps them to evolve, and how to handle a temper tantrum with a young person. A big step in working with an angry child is listening and understanding where their feelings are coming from. We need to listen what the child is saying about his or her feelings. Our children, our residents, are dealing with adult problems such as grief. Grief doesn't always mean the death of a loved one. It also can be grieving from the loss of your environment or your surroundings or your family members, leaving things behind. Also, abusive relationships. Many of our children come from domestic violence or relationships that are very toxic. Neglect. Many of our youth have come from environments where they didn't have access to clean water or food or adequate sleeping arrangements. They were usually really dirty and unkept, and they often did not get their basic needs met. Many of our kiddos have suffered sexual assault or they've witnessed sexual assault, including some of our kiddos who have developed inappropriate sexual behaviors as a result of that. Drug and alcohol abuse or exposure. Some of our kids were born drug babies. Some of them actually had access to drugs and alcohol in the home, and some of them just saw the negative effects of drug and alcohol from their parents. We've even had some children whose parents have died due to the fentanyl situation. And the final one is rejection. Many of our kiddos feel rejection from the foster care system because they get passed around the foster care system because of their behavioral issues, and also rejection from family members who didn't want to take them in, and that's why they entered the foster home or the foster care system in the first place. Sometimes they had relatives they could have gone to, but those relatives just didn't want to take on the family members because of their parents and because of the children's probable behavior. Unfortunately, the minds and bodies are simply not ready to handle all these stressors. Always get another staff to support you in these conversations with kiddos if you're uncomfortable, and let the youth know that you want to make sure their issues are covered with their counselor. So if a youth discloses some type of abuse or trauma, you're not really licensed as the therapist, so you wouldn't go into great detail on that, but you want to make sure that it's documented, and you want to make sure that they have the opportunity to revisit that with an administrative team member and the counselors who come to visit. We want to make sure that these issues are addressed. Sometimes they'll tell you, well, I don't want to take a bath because I often got hurt in the bathtub, those kind of things. When we talk about abuse, like sexual abuse, physical abuse, alcohol abuse, things like that, a lot of those things happened in the evening time. So while the kids were at school, things were safe, and then after the kids came home, after 4 or 5 o'clock, and all the way through bedtime until the child fell asleep, life was very chaotic. So it is no rare thing for us to see that the kids behave more difficult on the 3 to 11 shift because that is when they were most exposed to abuse and trauma. So that triggers those emotions in them. It makes them kind of scared and uncertain. So a lot of reassurance is very important in these particular shifts, and talking to them about what's going on ahead of the time. Key steps to working with the angry child. Provide comfort and reassurance or assurance. You need to tell the child that you care about his or her problems. They can tell when you're lying. They can tell when you're fake. You need to have genuine care for their problems. Showing confidence in his or her ability to tackle life's ups and downs. We want you to let them know that they have the ability to tackle life's ups and downs because they've made it this far. Letting them know when they're frustrated. When we can provide comfort and reassurance, oftentimes kids who first got here are frustrated that they've left everything behind, and they're also struggling with the fact that other kids have things that they don't have, like a CASA, or they get visitation, or they get phone calls, because sometimes when kids don't get those things, it often makes them frustrated and angry. We also need to get more information from the child to make sure that it's not just a personal need, like a basic need is needing to be met, such as they didn't get enough sleep, or are they hungry? Also, it can be a secondary level need, like are they afraid of something happening? Or are they worried about something, or even are they jealous about another kid and something that they have or that they get to do? It's okay for them to have these feelings. These feelings are normal. We shouldn't be angry with a child that they're having these feelings. But we need to get to the bottom of why they are in this bad mood. Why are they not cooperative, or why are they frustrated at everyone and complaining at everyone? We want to find out the root cause of that, and you need to do that through compassion, which is comfort, and reassuring them that everything will be okay once you get in for more information. You're going to be able to help resolve their difficulties or their problem once you get more information. We need to tell the child that everyone experiences anger. We've all been angry. We need to tell him or her about the last time that we felt really angry and how we dealt with it in a positive way. Some of the things I use as an example is the last time I was at the store, the checkout lady was really mean to me. She didn't have to be mean to me, but she must have had a bad day and she took it out on me and it hurt my feelings. Something basic like that. You don't want to go into giant detailed family problems, because then you're trying to have counseling with the child and you're letting them be your therapist. We never want that. What we want is you to use a basic example of some anger that you've experienced and how it was resolved in a healthy way. Always, like I said, remember to tailor your example for younger ears. You're not going to tell them about some time that you got in a fist fight with somebody or something like that, because that wouldn't be a positive example for children. You want to use examples that talk about how you overcame the anger, and also how you were able to move forward and not repeat that same pattern in your life. Another good way to help a child deal with anger is encouraging the child to shift gears, to spend some time doing things that he or she really likes to do. Playing sports, walking, drawing, playing a game, or reading a book. A different activity can refocus our thoughts and help alleviate some of the angry feelings. Now, this is challenging when you can't do some of those activities. For instance, what if it's late at night? We wouldn't have the ability to go outside and walk. But if the child needed to burn off some steam and you had the supervision of the other youth where you could get into a different location of the building, you might be able to walk in the living room or something along those lines. But oftentimes I encourage kids to journal. You can get a book, especially late at night, and get the kids to journal about what they're feeling so they don't forget the thoughts that they're having. Sometimes when they're very, very frustrated, they're thinking about things that they need or they want, or some changes they want to happen in their life. And so if they could write a letter either to their caseworker or our case managers, or to the judge even, or to their parents, and literally write down what they are needing or wanting. Sometimes just that tiny little effort helps them refocus. So getting them a journal from our supply area, or getting them some kind of composition notebook or something along those lines, can really help. Oftentimes when kiddos are wanting to do a gear shift and you're wanting to change an activity, you have to look at it as a whole. Is the child only throwing a fit when they're playing board games and they lose? Okay, that is a lesson that they need to learn, that everybody loses at games. Not everybody wins all the time. But sometimes you're dealing with kiddos who don't have that full ability to comprehend that situation. So they're either neurodivergent, or they just don't have the comprehension level for some reason to digest that they're not going to be able to win every single game. So then in those instances, I would have that young person, if they have lost out and they're really frustrated and causing havoc with everybody, I say, if you can be quiet and you can wait until this is over, you'll be able to pick the next game. Now, is that rewarding to them? Yes. Do we want to reward them for throwing a fit? No, not necessarily, but allowing them to be a leader when they've constantly lost and picking the next game is actually not necessarily a prize, but it is a compromise. And so that is something that you can do with young people to kind of help them feel more valuable in a situation where they feel minimal. If you lose games all the time, you feel minimal. Some of our kids may have learning disabilities, so they're not going to be as good at board games as some of the other children. Some of them may lack physical coordination, so they're not good at playing sports as the other children. And so we don't want to take those positive experiences away from the children who are good at them. We want to allow them their opportunity to thrive and succeed, but we also want to find out what can help our young person who is angry all the time thrive and achieve also. Oftentimes, I've encouraged staff to let that young person who has anger management issues be the leader, like to lead the group activity or lead the prayer or go help set the dining room table or something along those lines. When they get to feel as though they're a leader, you don't demand they do it, but you ask them if they'll do it. Sometimes just that extra step of making them feel important can make them have a better relationship with you and also take away some of their negative feelings about themselves that cause them to be so angry. Teaching basic problem-solving skills is important for our young people. When upsetting situations arise, the child who has practiced these skills will be more likely to go through the consequences of different actions and will ultimately make a better choice than violence. For example, last time when you got mad, you threw a toy. It was taken away. Or last time you got that mad, you lost an outing, and I really want you to go with us this time. I wouldn't want you to lose the outing, so can you tell me about your feelings so we can get you to go on this outing? What should you do this time to express your thoughts without causing any negative consequences? Letting them know the negative consequences of their actions, such as throwing an object, breaking a toy, screaming or yelling, pushing people down, refusing to come and go from an activity, all the different things that they don't want to do. Oftentimes, staff get into a power struggle with the kiddos, and the staff want to tell them that they have to do this and make them do it this way. Sometimes you really need to look at it, and everything, it doesn't have to be so concrete. It doesn't have to be so all or none. You can actually compromise with the young people and get somewhere in the middle. Now, that doesn't mean you give them extra tokens. That doesn't mean you give them a prize or extra toys or something like that for doing something. That means that they might get to help pick a task later on, like an activity or an outing, or they might get to lead a project. You want to talk to them about rewarding experiences that they can do that don't always necessarily mean a token from the token room. Tokens should only be 1 token per shift, like we've talked about before, and we need to do those things as they are supposed to happen. So we need to do 1 per shift, and then we use the token room only on Saturdays. When you are talking to a kid about their behavior, we want to make sure you don't do a thing where you list all their sins, like you do this all the time, and you're always this or you're always that. Don't use labels, and don't use self-fulfilling prophecy language to them. Like if you tell them they're chronically bad and they're always bad, then they are going to be bad because you're constantly telling them that they're bad. And so you want to be forgiving, you want to be patient, you want to be reinforcing, and you want to have them help get to a solution to where you're not telling them the answer. They're telling you the answer of how they can resolve this conflict, so you can actively see, are they processing the situation as it is, and can they handle preventing the negative consequence? One of the biggest key steps to working with the angry child is looking how you handle your own anger. Are you setting a good example? Would you want to be intimidated by a child who admires you? Are you yelling, giving an evil eye, or holding a grudge? Watch your sarcasm and your nonverbal body language, tone of voice, and the emotions behind your conversations. You really have to ask yourself, are you angry? They read your face. Are you rolling your eyes? Are you sighing? Are you huffing at them? Do you give them kind of an evil look? Young people do not want to change when they know that you don't like them. They can feel your negative energy. They can feel when you're always going to get onto them and you don't have faith in them. You need to make sure that you build a healthy relationship with our young people. You want that young person to look up to you. I use the word above, like to admire you. If a kid admires you, they're not intimidated by you. They're not afraid of you. If you're constantly nagging them and yelling at them and finding fault in them, you're never going to build rapport, and that's going to cause the child to become more angry, more resentful, and they're not going to have the ability to pay attention to you and the ability to follow your instructions because you're not being the adult leader. You're acting like a child yourself. So you have to keep your own personality in check. So you have to ask yourself, am I angry? And if so, why is this child making me so angry? What in their behavior is causing me to be so confrontational or to be so sarcastic to them? Sarcasm never builds good relationships with kiddos and only sets them off. Just like anything there in the blue, like nonverbal body languages, tone of voice, level of sarcasm, and the emotion you have behind your conversations. If you are doing anything there with negative energy and negative context, then you yourself are setting the child up for being more angry and for your shift to be more difficult, and the shift of your coworkers to be more difficult, because now that child is frustrated at you and will carry it out on everyone around you. So you have to, number one, keep yourself in check when dealing with an angry child, because after all, you are the adult, not the kiddo. The kiddo is not an adult. So we can expect them to behave as though they don't know better, but you yourself know better. And so we have to rise to the occasion to try to lead the young person out of their angry moment in a healthy context. Acknowledging good behavior is essential. When a child deals with his or her anger in a positive way, praise their positive choice. Once again, praise anything positive you see. Like you can use praise without reminding them of what they've done wrong, because that's where people fall short. They're like, oh my gosh, you did this so great. It's not like yesterday when you were awful. Okay, that's not the direction you want to take with this. You want to praise them for the moment they're in. Take every opportunity to reinforce their strengths. You know, Sarah, thank you for being a great leader. Sarah, thank you for participating today with such kindness and patience, and thank you for cleaning up. I really appreciate that. It really makes me feel special that you care enough to be in my group and to be so helpful like that. You got to think in terms of how can you acknowledge the child being better. Often child who are angry and who are frustrating and who are the difficult children, they often are only seen for their negative actions and not any positive ones. So they're constantly being reminded of all the negative things they do, and so they get used to that. When they start hearing positive things, it triggers a different feeling in their brain, and it triggers like different chemicals, like dopamine and serotonin and all those kind of things. And then all of a sudden they're like, oh my goodness, it feels so nice to be told I'm doing a good job. And so I like that feeling. It doesn't make me feel icky, yucky, bad, and it doesn't reinforce my negative self-image of myself. Because you got to realize these kids also have a negative self-image. So when you start giving them positive feedback for healthy, good behaviors, that helps them recognize that they have the skills to achieve and be good and be successful and be kind, and it helps them learn and grow. So be sure and be encouraging of our young people when you see them doing positive things. After an angry outburst, tantrum, fit, just a child being very, very frustrated and they needed to kind of be coerced to come down and talk to come down from that anger, it's very important that you take the time to have a follow-up conversation for learning. This is where growth and change of behavior really happens. So we'll use the name Sarah because I said that earlier on the previous slide. Sarah, what made you so angry today? Like what caused that anger? And then let her answer the question. Don't quiz her a lot. Just try to be quiet. Let her answer that question. If she still doesn't know anything, say, did you need or want something that you weren't getting? I'm confused as to why you got so mad. Can you let me know? So that way we'll be more prepared to handle your anger next time. What actions did you take as a staff to kind of help Sarah do better? What actions did Sarah take on her own to try to make changes in her own behavior to comfort herself or to stop herself from having a larger tantrum? Did it work or make the situation worse? Oftentimes when I'm telling staff to reevaluate that is staff cannot just sit and threaten a kid of negative things, negative consequences. because these kids have already lost everything. If you've lost everything and you're threatening to lose some more stuff, they don't care. And so literally, they've already lost everything. They've lost their whole world. And here you are threatening that they're going to lose something else. They don't really care. That doesn't really genuinely cause them to make change. What causes them to make change is impacts in actual relationships now. And so letting that young person know, hey, Sarah, I really appreciate it when you act like this. And I don't know what's going on with you today. We've all had bad days, but right now you're just having trouble communicating. You're just angry at everybody. Let's get to the bottom of this. Can you tell me what's going on with you? Having that conversation rather than just barking orders, threatening to give her a strike, threatening to take privileges away from her, threatening to take a token. Life is not about all these threats. We get enough of that in the world, but these children have already lost everything, like I said before. That doesn't help them. That usually triggers them and makes them worse. You need to get to the bottom of it by pulling them aside and saying, hey, let's talk this through. What's going on with you? This is not like you. And I know we can work on this and things can turn out differently. So that's kind of like that last sentence. What could have been said or done differently? When that kid has an outburst, we need to know what could we have done differently and what could the child have done differently. It's not just about the kid and their outburst, because sometimes we trigger them. Either us or another staff member or another kid could be chiming in the background, being sarcastic or hateful or sin-taking where they're listing all their flaws, or just being antagonistic, rolling their eyes, huffing, doing the whole whatever, talk to the hand, that kind of thing. You can't be negative and want the child to have a positive reaction. So you can't come in it with a negative, bad attitude of, I don't want to deal with you, you're a pain, this is a pain, I don't like any of this. If you go in with that tone of energy and expression to the kiddo, they're not going to respond well to you. You have to go in with compassion and say, look, I genuinely care about you and I don't want us to have a bad shift. I don't want to have a bad day. How can you help me make this better for you? And so this requires a lot of verbal interaction with the kiddo. And number one, it all stems back to trying to build that relationship. So having follow-up conversations for learning and growth is very key when dealing with an angry child. Temper tantrums can really put our parenting skills to the test. The 3-year-old that explodes with impatience, or the 6-year-old who screams in the store after hearing no, are all displays of a temper tantrum. The kicking, stomping, pounding, yelling, crying, slamming doors, throwing their body on the ground or on the floor, and the hurtful words that accompany a temper tantrum are typical of children between the ages of 3 and 6, with some 7 to 9-year-olds exhibiting this behavior. But in our environment, we know that it can happen at all ages. Because why? Because children whose brains have been impacted by trauma are not set at the right age level. So they have digressed. So many of our children, even our teens, can display temper tantrums like a toddler and throw a fit because they do not know how to adequately process their thoughts and emotions, and then they display it physically. Emotional outbursts can take place at any time or any place, whether the child's in a doctor's office, grocery store, around family and friends, and some are even more in our shelter environment with kids who come from our trauma backgrounds, like I just said. Our kiddos sometimes act out in the doctor's office because they're afraid of needles. Sometimes our kiddos will act out in a store because they want us to buy them something that we're not going to buy them. And oftentimes they have temper tantrums in our building because they feel slighted in some way. Especially new arrivals who get here and other children have a whole bunch of toys and they don't have any toys. They don't understand that. They need to be talked to about how you earn tokens to go into the store, or if we have a party and have bingo, that's how these other children have acquired those things. We also need to talk about fairness. Children who are really sweet and really easygoing often get favored, and that's not fair to the children who are being difficult, but they get favored by the staff because they are easier to deal with, and so they often get to pick what the kids want to do more so in a game setting, or they get to go first, or things along those lines. We need to even allow these children who are working on themselves emotionally to have the opportunity to pick a game or to be first in line, and do things from a standpoint of they need an opportunity to try to lead as well. We need to make sure that we acknowledge the children who behave wonderfully and acknowledge their behavior, but we also need to acknowledge when our children who throw temper tantrums or who have anger management issues are keeping themselves in check. And we need to say, oh my goodness, Sarah, you're doing such a great job on my shift today. Man, I sure appreciate that. I just know today's going to be a good day. Notice how I said, I know today's going to be a good day. We need to set ourselves up for a self-fulfilling prophecy or a manifestation of things good. If the children only hear that they're bad and they only hear that they're difficult, and the kids even hear it when you come into work and you see which group you have, like, oh, I don't want that group again. I just can't handle so-and-so. You don't realize that the kids can hear you. They can hear a pin drop. So anytime you're speaking about the other children, other staff, or themselves, they can hear you. And so you've got to have a good attitude in order for them to understand that you're really here for them and you genuinely care about them and you want the best for them. Otherwise, they'll deem you as fake and they won't have a good relationship with you, and they will continue to fight with you and fight with you in your group. Another thing that people make a mistake of doing as well when kiddos throw temper tantrums is they argue with the kid, okay? Don't fall into that role of being a child yourself. Don't get into a power struggle and argue with the kid or bicker with the kid or kind of have some kind of power struggle fight with the kid. That says more about you than it does about the child. That says that you need maybe counseling and you need help, because literally you're now letting this child's opinion of you but changing rules. Like, these are the set rules we're going to follow. I'm not going to be flexible on them. And if the child throws a fit, they can manipulate you into crossing boundaries that you don't need to cross. For instance, if a kid is throwing paper and this, that, and the other, you don't have to just rush in and act like it's the end of the world. You can ask them nicely to quit throwing paper, but you don't have to overreact with the kiddo initially. It's better to address things immediately, sharply, quickly, but not with full forceful energy. Address them in a positive, healthy way to get the child to change their behavior. Give them that opportunity to grow and change. In order to gain a better hold of a situation that involves a temper tantrum, it's suggested to learn more about the subject and its causes. This means to stop, observe, find out if you just walked in on the situation and didn't see what caused the conflict. You have to have some background information of why the conflict started. The emotions that swell within a child to create a temper tantrum involve higher brain functions that are unable to lower the levels of excitement and expression associated with the lower brain functions that control our emotions and our physical responses. And as a result, an unreasonable fit that may include screaming, crying, intense defiance will often bubble to the top or surface. The child may become completely unwilling to listen or comply with any efforts to pacify the situation. The only way you can get a kid to stop is not by force. The only way you can get a kid to stop is by the relationship. Oftentimes, it's due to a conflict that associations with the transfer of activities. So that's going from outside play to inside play, or outside play to dinner time or something like that. Or we're getting ready for bath time, getting ready for bedtime, getting ready to go to school. So oftentimes the young person are having trouble adapting to the transition of activities. When we know that that's a chronic problem, we need to let the child know who is having these kind of issues ahead of time. So, hey, Billy, in 5 minutes, we're going to have to go in. So when it's closer to time to come in, I'm going to warn you. And so can you help me kind of gather things up and be a leader for me? Okay. Number one, I never was mean to Billy. Number two, I acknowledge that Billy's going to struggle. And number three, I gave Billy some goals where he could be in a leadership role rather than in a subsurface role. And that would also give him a goal to help work towards coming in faster. And so as a result, we need to make sure that we know what's going on with the situation before we address the temper tantrum. We need to make sure that were kids fighting over something that was like a shared toy, like it's an agency toy and the kids were fighting over it. In those instances, when I can't get to the bottom of who had it first or who had it second or put time limits on the object, I put the item in timeout and then have them both choose 2 new items. Sometimes it's better to see if you can get the kids to agree to come to a time solution where you can play with it for 5 minutes and you can play with it for 5 minutes, but make sure you adhere to the rule that it is the same amount of time for each child. Kiddos often will throw a fit if there's an issue with fairness, and so you got to make sure that you're not giving one child more privileges than another child based on similar age and similar functional abilities, because kids have big issues with fairness, and if you have caused a fairness issue, then the child has lost faith in you, they've lost trust in you, they feel that you're favoring another child, and it's going to be difficult for you to resolve that issue without apologizing. Here's a real big one. Often a child cannot stay still, sit down, or stand in one place. These are kids who have some issues like neurodivergence. That's going to be like autism or ADHD, or even kiddos who are OCD. But it could also be just kiddos who just are environmentally challenged and not been around this many toys. Our environment's very stimulating. Sometimes even when the reason for the temper tantrum is settled, the child, as seen with the caregiver that finally gives into buying the candy bar, the child may not even reach a level of calm or satisfaction. And that's where staff who kept giving away excessive tokens or giving away excessive privileges, when you do that to a kiddo, you've actually bought their behavior. And so you don't want to do that. That's why we only have 1 token per shift given by direct care staff. Then they can only earn 3 tokens in the daytime. So in one day they earn 3 tokens and they acquire those tokens through the week. So then at the end of the week they have the ability to go to the store and buy things that they want. They've earned them. The emotional roller coaster that a child enters with a temper tantrum is sometimes attributed to an immature phase of the forebrain development, highlighting their inability to deal with building of emotions. They don't understand what's going on. So by just giving them candy or just rewarding them to make a behavior stop, which is what's usually happened before they came here, the parent pacified them with an immediate something to calm them down, whether it be game time or candy or Cokes, or you can go to sleep whenever you want to, because I'm not going to put a boundary on that. A lot of our kids had no boundaries whatsoever, and it's because they would throw a fit and the parent didn't want to deal with the fit. And usually it's because the parent was immature, the parent had drug and alcohol problems, or the parent themselves was traumatized and their brain functioning and ability was also far set from where it should be as an adult. But we have the ability to see emotional tantrums for what they are. They are a roller coaster. We're going to have to ride the roller coaster to get it to stop. And what we need to do is understand that with all ups, there are going to be downs. And so literally, don't argue with the kid when they're on an argument high. When the kid's, very, very angry and riding that temper tantrum and they're on a high level of emotion, it's not good to argue and fight with them. It's good to let them kind of wind down. And then when they've, the roller coaster has peaked and it's gone into a lower position, you can see they're not kicking, screaming, and frailing around or anything like that. You can talk to them about their behaviors and say, hey, what did you really need there? What did you really want there? Did all this fit throwing accomplish that? No, it didn't, because I couldn't understand what you were wanting. I couldn't understand what you were needing. And so next time you need or want something like this, what's a better way to go about that? You could come and ask me. Okay, you can come and ask me, and then I'd appreciate that, because I can't listen to you when you're doing all that kicking and screaming and hollering and fight picking, because then you get in trouble, you lose privileges, you have negative consequences that occur as a result of those behaviors, and I don't want you to be in trouble. My goal is not to put you in trouble. My goal is to help you succeed. And that's the one thing that I think the kiddos don't hear from us enough. Is our goal is not to put you into timeout. Our goal is not to put you into trouble. Our goal is to help you succeed. We want you to be successful. They need to hear that more from us. Some children are more prone to exhibiting a temper tantrum than others. Like I mentioned before, as seen in individuals with neurological deficiencies such as autism, developmental barriers, or mood disorders. Kiddos who also have things like ADHD, bipolar disorder, OCD, borderline personality disorder, even antisocial children, they all have an issue where they can become fixated on a problem and can't see past it. It's almost like being a horse with blinders on. They can only see straight ahead, and they're going to just keep, powering forward in this anger mode. So a child that suffers damage to their forebrain may also undergo more temper tantrums than others, regardless of the injury, if it's temporary or permanent. The early brain development issues are also seen in children who experience trauma in abusive and neglectful homes. Children who couldn't guarantee if they were going to eat or not. Children who couldn't guarantee if they were going to get a good night's sleep or not, and they had to worry about mom and dad, trying to kill each other in the night. So they had to protect themselves and hide for safety. They stayed in a constant state of fight or flight. And so kiddos who are stuck in fight or flight mode often don't know how to process their emotions, and they're fixated on a thought. And so the thought fixation that they could actually experience are, I'm stupid, or I'm a bad person, or I'm, nobody likes me, everybody hates me. Those are things that they like to say. And so it's going to be hard for us to undo those thoughts that the kiddos are having about themselves, because they've been taught that, they've heard it multiple times, and so it's going to be hard for us to undo that. And so we have to have patience with those kiddos, and that may mean that you have to tell them 101 times not to do something, or 101 times to change their attitudes and behaviors. Even though you've told them 101 times, it's going to take a while for that behavior to sink in. As with any habitual behavior, it can take anywhere from 3 to 6 months to become a good habit. To replace a bad habit with a good one, it takes 3 to 6 months of consistent behavior change to make it permanent. So if our kiddos came in and they were 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, however old they are, you got to consider how long they've behaved like this. You can't expect them to get it in 1 or 2 times of you redirecting them for them to understand it fully and not make that same mistake. It goes as simple as cussing, using labels that are not appropriate, such as the B word, the N word, things along those lines. Also, being hateful and telling everybody to shut up, or, saying things that normally sound like a terroristic threat, but really are not. It's just part of their culture. Like sometimes, they might say things like, I'm just going to hurt you, or this, that, and the other. And so they're not always necessarily going to hurt somebody. It's something that they frequently heard. So we can't automatically just go, oh my goodness, they said this. Okay, we got to get to the bottom of it and make sure that's how they really feel, and not just jump to conclusions. But we also need to understand that with patience and with kindness and with rapport, we're going to have to constantly repeat ourselves to retrain these children to behave without anger and impulsivity. And so it's teaching them to slow down. It's giving those positive reinforcements like, oh my gosh, Billy, oh my gosh, Sarah, thank you so much for, resolving this without a conflict. Oh man, you're getting so big, you're so mature. Giving them that healthy feedback, letting them know that they are making good choices. That's very, very key and crucial. If you've had trouble getting the kid to go take a bath, or if you've had trouble getting the kid to go to bed, or if you've had trouble getting the kid to brush their teeth, or get in the van and buckle up, whatever it may be, once you see them doing good and you don't acknowledge that, that stands out to that kid. So you have to acknowledge when they are doing things right, and you almost have to over-acknowledge it. That way, it becomes a reinforced behavior, and it yields change through just your acknowledgement and praise. You didn't have to give them a token. You didn't have to give them a piece of candy. You didn't have to give them a privilege. You didn't have to give them something tangible that they could touch. It was surely the fact that you said, oh my gosh, look at you. You were great. Look how you've changed your behavior. Caregivers often dread the temper tantrums, but it's important to keep in mind that they are common occurrences and rather expected behavior for younger children. It may also help to keep in perspective that children are not the only ones to succumb to temper tantrums, and that even adults are known to display this undesirable behavior. That's when we can see a staff member who's getting into constant argumentative power struggles with kiddos. They are themselves then having a temper tantrum. And so we need to make sure that when we're working with our coworkers and we see that they have fallen into this temper tantrum pattern themselves, we need to have them tap out, and we need to take over the conversation, because now it's become non-therapeutic, and it's not going to help the child, it's not going to help them, and they need to gather their composure. While the temper tantrum that occurs during childhood is often associated with not getting one's way, there are many causes of a sudden explosion of emotion. The logic behind a temper tantrum is not always easily perceived. Kicking and screaming that may erupt could simply be a way for an overstimulated child to rebel against too much activity. A child is sometimes hungry, overly tired when they display temper tantrums and are unable to communicate these feelings. Again, for our neurodivergent children, that's the autistic children, the OCD kiddos, the ADHD kiddos, the kiddos who have mood disorders such as bipolar disorder or borderline personality disorder, antisocial personality disorder, some of those kind of disorders, even intermittent explosive disorder. If they get overstimulated, their first go-to emotion is anger and a fit. So we have to teach them to work through these feelings. And it's not by succumbing to the emotions and temper tantrums to where we also exhibit the same behaviors. So again, we need to make sure that our anger is in check and that we understand that they are children and we are adults. And so we need to address their behaviors in a suitable fashion by not arguing with them, not picking a fight with them, not reminding them that they're constantly in trouble, but saying, hey, are you hungry? Are you thirsty? Are you tired? Or is there something going on here that I'm not aware of? Because you need to help them find their words to tell you what's going on with the reason behind their anger. And again, if you see a coworker losing their temper and displaying an adult temper tantrum, you need to have that adult tap out and you need to work with that kiddo and say, hey, I see you're struggling a lot with Billy there. It seems like you're also kind of yelling and screaming. Let me take over right now so you can regain your composure. And that person shouldn't then display an anger problem towards you. They should be grateful that you're helping them through this situation, but bring it to a supervisor's attention so we know that that person is struggling with their own anger problems as an adult. We need to be made aware of that. A child who is undergoing sickness or suffering in the first signs of an illness may also showcase a temperamental fit. Sometimes a child's routine is just disrupted and the confusion becomes too much to handle. A temper tantrum may also arise when independence levels are threatened or they feel the pressure of a high level of restriction. Kiddos who get all their stuff taken away. Sometimes staff want to really take all the kids' things away, and it's kind of like a power play to take all the kids' stuff away, and then I'm going to take all your things away if you're just not listening to me. That doesn't always help them. Sometimes that sets them off because now you're restricting them at a high level. They're feeling too much pressure over the situation. Their independence is being threatened. Their autonomy is being threatened. So now are they not only going to throw a fit, but they're going to throw a fit 5,000 times bigger than them before. So sometimes by trying to do that real restrictive, controlling kind of behavior to get a kiddo to talk about their temper tantrums, it backfires, and it's because you're trying to put too much pressure on the kiddo. You're trying to restrict them too much, to rein them in, and that's really not what they needed to do to help build a conversation. And so oftentimes you don't want to jump to that as a form of punishment. You want to jump to communication more than anything. In the majority of circumstances involving a temper tantrum, the root of the act is often centered on just frustration. There is also a misconception that regarding temper tantrums, as they are not solely connected to unpleasant situations and can surface even when too much tension or stress mounts in regards to an enjoyable or exciting circumstances. They get so pumped up and so excited. Say you're going on an outing, or you're going to have a party, or you're going to do something that they really wanted to do, like a painting craft, or fly kites outside, whatever it is. They have so much pent-up emotion and excitement built up around it that they can actually get testy and be a little frustrated because they're just so pumped up about something occurring that they can't regulate and control their emotions. So it's good to help them identify that it's a positive thing. Gosh, I know it's exciting that we're going to do this, and it's so much fun, and I can see your enthusiasm and your excitement, but you're also kind of getting edgy and hateful towards other people. So we need to work on that. It's okay to have fun and be excited, and I realize that, but I want you to work on slowing down just a little bit and breathing. Notice that conversation I just had as an example. Never once did I threaten to take a toy. Never once did I tell them that they weren't doing the right thing. I wasn't bullying them. I wasn't berating them. I was just saying, hey, it's great to be here. We're going to have a lot of fun. But I noticed that you're a little agitated. Let's bring that down a notch, okay? So we need to take in terms on how we present the information to the kiddo, that it's not like that all or none philosophy where I'm going to take everything away from you and you're going to lose everything and you're just going to be in your room with nothing, ha ha ha. That's sometimes how staff come off to the kids. That kind of like all or none philosophy. And that only makes the kid resent you and hate you, and they will constantly fight with you until they leave the building. So you need to make sure that you're not doing that. You need to make sure that you're there to be compassionate and reassuring. We'll go back to that very first slide, that compassion and reassuring, to let the kid know it's okay to be frustrated. It's okay to be stressed. It's okay to have these feelings. It's just not okay to be aggressive, and it's not okay to be mean, and it's not okay to like throw things or fit through or things like that. So these are things you have to work through with them. Kids with a limited scope of understanding, or their ability to verbalize their needs or desires, is coupled with frustration because they cannot express what they need to happen to make them feel satisfaction or calm. And so they don't have the verbal skills they need or the intellectual functioning they need to express what's really going on. So this is a perfect storm or a perfect formula to create a tantrum. A child is very capable of becoming angry, and when they can't understand the realm of their emotions, they usually resort to tantrums to express their needs. Additionally, the ability to cope with frustration at a young age is simply underdeveloped. Also, that we tend to excuse the little ones, like toddlers. We tend to excuse the toddlers for behaving that way because we know they don't understand. However, we don't give that same grace or that same compassion or patience to a kid who's a little bit bigger, but not taking into consideration what abuse and trauma they suffered before they came here, which caused them to be on a developmental delay. And so literally we have to take into the account of what did that child see and suffer and experience, which caused them to have that developmental delay. So now I'm going to help them understand their emotions and understand their needs better to help them better find the right words to express them rather than throwing a fit. And so this is where we really need to practice patience, like understanding, like little kids, even tiny kids, are going to use profanity or cuss. If cussing or using bad words like the B word or the N word or any of these words out there, if any of these kind of words bother you so much that it's going to cause you to lose your cool, don't work here. I'm going to be keeping it honest. These young children grew up in an environment where they could say things that were just awful, and they could express themselves in the most awful way. And so we need to be patient and compassionate to help them learn that that's not how we express our emotions. We shouldn't laugh and think it's cute when toddlers, say bad words, and we shouldn't be mean and belligerent to the older kids when they use those bad words. Sometimes those bad words are their coping skills. Now we need to teach them to use different words, but you don't have that argument right in the heat of the moment. You have to wait till you build rapport and you have that ability to have them listen to you on choosing a different word and having them choose those words. You're not the one that needs to choose those words. They need to be the ones who can pick their words. You can help them select some choices of words to use. When behavior of a young child grows out of control, it's necessary for the caregiver to step in and regain a hold of the situation. That doesn't mean to domineer or dictate everything. In order for the transition to occur smoothly, it's important for the caregiver to maintain a level head and not get angry with the child. Anger only adds fuel to the fire of a temper tantrum. So by yelling, arguing, listing all their faults, threatening to take everything away, if you're there just to spew negative consequences at them or to remind them of how difficult they're being, then you're not helpful to the situation. You need to take time to regroup, and you need to take time to figure out how you can come back at the situation with compassion and reassurance and help the child determine what was their ultimate goal before they threw their fit. Was it fairness? Was it hunger? Was it being tired? Was it being overstimulated? Was it embarrassment? Was it the loss of something? Are they dealing with grief? Are they dealing with a higher counseling related need? Did they get disappointed because the parents didn't show up for visitation? There's a whole gamut of things that have caused the child to be angry. Oftentimes, again, we ourselves create the anger because we've been unfair and we showed favoritism towards another kiddo, or we're treating that kiddo with more restrictive, more consequential terms than we are the other children just because they're more difficult to get along with. And so we have to try to be patient, and we have to try to be kind even when that child is not patient or kind with us. And again, children with developmental issues like trauma, in addition to other things like neurodivergent issues or mood disorders or things along those lines, just sheer neglect, they have more trouble processing information, and they have learned this behavior. It's a bad habit, and it's going to take us a while to get it under control. So we have to be patient with them and with ourselves. However, the worst thing a caregiver can do is give in to these behaviors associated with the temper tantrum. As much as you want the screaming and possible public embarrassment to end, it's not good to reinforce the behavior you don't want to deal with in the future. Okay, now let me break that down. You don't want to bribe them with candy or a token or more computer time to stop the fit, okay? If they're in a full-blown fit, you don't give them a reward, okay, to get them to stop their behavior. That reinforces fit throwing. So, what do? You remain calm. Calm is a must when dealing with a tantrum. When possible, it's best to ignore the act. Sometimes, I like to use Lisa as an example. Lisa went to Sam's one time. She had a rainbow assortment of children with her, younger ages. One little girl was totally throwing out and throwing a fit, threw herself in the floor at Sam's, and people were looking at Lisa with judgmental eyes, like staring her down like she was a terrible mother. That's very embarrassing. Lisa could have easily become uncomfortable and yelled at the child, but instead she smiled. She had the other children with the other staff member, and then she would encourage people to walk around her and to be careful of her as she was currently working on herself. And then Lisa, kind of let the kid just wear herself down, and then she finally got up and she didn't get whatever she was fighting for because she wanted some kind of object at Sam's, and she learned that fit throwing wasn't going to get it. And Lisa didn't have to fight with her in the store or anything like that. And so thank you, Lisa, for letting me use you as an example. But that was a really good display of how to handle uncomfortable situations. Many times a tantrum lingers when there is an audience. And so therefore, many caregivers have succeeded in asking the child to go to their room or to a quieter area to have them calm down, and then we can talk about it once you've calmed down. Now, sometimes the child doesn't want to leave the room. They just want to throw the fit and scream and holler right there. The best thing to do at that point is to remove the audience. So getting the other kids to go into another area to give that child some space to calm down. And so you wouldn't want to say, oh, there's, Kara over there throwing a fit everybody again. Oh my gosh, let's go in here so we don't have to listen to her crap, That's not how you're going to handle that. Notice how negative I was being. Notice how hateful I was being. Notice how I was putting her on display. That's not how you would do that. You would say, hey guys, Kara seems to be upset. Let's let her have some time to cool down. Let's go over here so we can get out of her way and allow her the opportunity to calm down, and staff to work with her, and then we'll all get back together as a group, okay? Then that leaves Kara, the fit throwing kid, in the living room or wherever she's at, because she didn't want to move, and then that allows a staff member to sit close by, and then that person's not going to browbeat her. They're not going to argue with her. They're just going to say, Kara, hey, I'm going to sit over here in this chair, and when you feel calm, let's come over here and let's talk to me, and let's see if we can't figure out what's going on here, okay? Notice how that person wasn't yelling at Kara. That person said, I'm here for you, Kara. I'm supportive. When you're ready to talk to me, we're going to figure out what's going on and how to help you. You may not be able to meet Kara's goals, okay? Because Kara may say, well, I want to go home. Well, you can't do anything about that, right? You can't let the child go home because you don't have any control over that. So unfortunately, you're going to say, Kara, I know you want to go home. And I've seen many kids here who want to go home too. And so I personally can't understand that from your perspective, but I can understand it from other children's perspective that I've seen this before. And I do know that you want to go home. And I'm so sorry you can't go home right now. But throwing a fit and being real frustrated with everyone doesn't help you go home any faster. And so what we could do is write a letter to the judge or the case manager. What we could do is talk to some people who make those decisions and let your voice be heard. Sometimes they just want to be heard. Many times you can actually find out that other kids have actually been picking on them. And sometimes it's the kids who act really, really nice. And so they're being very sneaky and very sly. And so sometimes that kid might have been called a name or might have been bullied in some way, and you didn't catch it. And no one caught it because the other kids are being tricky and sneaky. And so that kid just threw the fit, and they're the kid who gets the most attention. The squeaky wheel gets the grease, so to speak. So they get in trouble because they've been triggered by the other kiddos. And sometimes that kiddo who's really throwing a fit is actually the victim in the circumstances. So we can't always assume that kid is the problem child. Positive parenting is a must. Screaming at a child. Now that's not raising your voice. There's a difference between raising your voice to get people's attention, but screaming at a child shows lack of control. Trying to reason with your child in the midst of a tantrum is mostly ineffective. When that kid is fully screaming, hollering, and throwing stuff, that is the time that you need to shut up. I'm going to be honest. You don't need to fuel the fire. The best thing you can do at that time is to say, hey, Kara, I'm here for you once you calm down, and let's try to talk this through. Okay? If they tend to escalate and become more dangerous, then you might want to engage verbally. But the best thing to do is give them space, move the audience, and allow that child to calm down before you talk to them. Look at those little pictures. There's the adult who's screaming and pointing and hovering over the kid and says, don't threaten and yell at me, And then there's the lady who's over there talking to the girl, and she said, do, and then she pauses to listen, talk it out, okay? So that's what we're looking for. Sometimes they're Sometimes they are so wound up with emotions so tightly that the child can't even hear you or focus on what you're saying. So this will only cause you frustration. They can't hear you because they're wound too tight to listen right now. Their brain is shut off. They're on overdrive like a robot who's frothing at the mouth, and they just can't handle it. So you to tell them or advise them or lecture them, that's just not the time or place for that. That's what sets kids off and makes them worse. So you need to hush, listen, wait till the tantrum is passed, and then talk it out with the kiddo. So like it says here, once a tantrum has passed, a child requires comfort and support, as some tantrums are also traumatizing. It scares them. Sometimes their own behavior scares them. Delivering reassurance shows you still care and forgive the child for their outburst. Holding a grudge and trying to make them feel guilty and doing all that kind of stuff like that is not the time or place for that. You can let them know, hey, it scares me when you act like this. It really worries me and scares me. I don't like that. And I really like it when you talk more calm, and it helps me hear you better, because when you're screaming and hollering and yelling things at me, I can't process the information you're trying to give me. But you need to do that also in a healthier tone. So you're talking it out like the picture on the right, not screaming it out like the picture on the left. Regardless of how a child experiences and expresses their feelings of anger, the way caregivers respond to them during these times of anxiety is very important for when children are upset. They reference how their caregivers will interrelate with them and this type of interaction to help them calm down. So if you're there's so many of us, there's so many staff. So if you're over there yelling and screaming and hollering at them when another staff member is trying to be reassuring and calming, it confuses the child, because really the person who's being reassuring and calming and not instigating the child or being passive aggressive or fight picking with the kiddo, they are being therapeutic and they're trying to resolve the problem. They're not catering to them. They're not giving them extra tokens. They're not giving them extra candy. They're giving them extra compassion. And so when they're giving them extra compassion, they're trying to get the child to identify their feelings so we can get their needs met in a healthy way. And so we really, really need to make sure that we are all balanced in how we treat the children, because one of those staff members who set them off only fuels the fire and makes the situation worse. And those people are not always yellers. They're people who just remind the children that they're always in trouble. They're also people who think it's funny to set the kid off. Like literally, we should not have staff members like that. But I can't control the people who we hire, because sometimes they don't act like that in an interview, and then they act like that once they work here. So when you see somebody who's a coworker who is fight picking or targeting a child or instigating a child to get in trouble, or just really trying to push a child's buttons, then let us know. Let us know as administrative team members, because they should not be here to work with our children. And that's just the truth. We need to be here to be caregivers for these kiddos. We need to interrelate with them in a calm way so we can help guide them to improving their behavior. We need a model that we have self-control ourselves, that we are not going to have to get all angry and riled up, that we're not going to take things personally. We're not going to burst into tears. We're not going to burst into anger. We're not going to have these extreme emotions, because we ourselves have our emotions under control, and we are the adults. We're going to lead by example, modeling how they should internally manage their own emotions. So that's what we're looking for. Now I'm going to go over the 7 suggestions to help a child deal with strong feelings of anger. Number 1, and very, very important, be calm. Children need their caregivers to be calm and collect when they are unable to be. When caregivers get too upset, the child feels increasingly anxious and guilty that the caregiver is suffering. The best suggestion is to counter the child's dismay with calm and clear words. For instance, if a child is saying mean and hurtful and awful behaviors, you don't need to show disdain for that. You need to watch your nonverbal body language and your physical body language. You don't need to burst into tears. You don't need to be hysterical. You don't need to be outraged or anything like that. Keep calm. Keep a poker face. Try not to give mean looks. Try not to give fake looks. Try to be neutral. Being calm is being very neutral and balanced. And so that's very important for our young people. Number 2, be firm. It's important for the caregiver to not let the situation intensify. The more a child feels out of control, the worse the situation becomes, and firmness should be practiced with clear and direct words in a serious manner. Now that comes to throwing things, hitting people, things like that. You cannot make threats that you can't keep. And so like young children can't go to jail. So threatening them with the cops all the time is useless. So letting them know, I want you to be able to go on outings. Okay, not once did I say you can't go on an outing. I just said I want you to be able to go on outings, and I know later this week we're going somewhere. And so in order to do that, you're going to have to be calm and not hit others. And so how can I help you, Billy, not to hit other people? You know, I know sharing is difficult for you, and I know that some other kiddos are getting on your nerves, but what are they doing to get on your nerves? Again, a lot of the times we don't know what's going on in the foreground or the background of these situations with kiddos where some of the kids are actually bullying and picking on the most difficult kid to set them off because it's fun to watch them self-destruct. And that is the same thing that we get sometimes with staff who shouldn't really be here. Staff who like to set off the kids who can't control themselves. And so who like to argue with the kiddos and be passive aggressive and just be antagonistic with the kiddos. Being firm is not being antagonistic. Being firm is not being threatening. Being firm is being also fair. And so we want the child to know what is acceptable and what is not. Hitting is never acceptable, period. That's a firm statement. We do not hit. And that's a firm statement. You can say, we do not hit. We do not damage property. We do not call mean names to other people. Okay, and then you then get calm and then talk them through of other ways of handling that situation. There's a lot of exercises that counselors often use, like screaming in a pillow or pacing or breathing in and out with breathing exercises like a dragon. There's so many things that they could do instead of screaming bad words or hitting other people and things along those lines. Number 3, being empathetic. Being empathetic. When children are angry, they are upset about something and not feeling well. Think of this as a child in some sort of pain, which is difficult when they are not yelling at you or calling you bad names. Statements such as, I can tell that you're angry about something, can be very soothing to the child who oftentimes does not know that he or she aren't feeling in that moment. They don't know what's going on with them. I know you're angry about something. Can you tell me about what's going on? And they're like, you don't care. Well, yes, I do care because I just asked you about it. And so when they scream, you don't care back at you or things like that, your goal is not to scream back at them. Your goal is to stay calm and to be patient and then be empathetic and say, still, I can see that something's really bothering you. Are you hungry? Did something happen that I'm not aware of? Did somebody hurt your feelings? Are you in pain? Do you have a headache? How are you feeling? Did something bad happen at school? Did something bad happen here? Asking those empathetic questions, trying to get an answer, lets them know that you care. And then they're like, well, you still don't care, da 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 da. And so be patient. Remember, being patient, being calm. Say, well, you know what, I'm going to let you think about it, and I'm going to get away from you just a minute. I'm going to go over there and sit away from you and let you have time to think. And then when you're ready to talk, I'm going to come back to you and we're going to revisit about this. I'm going to let you have time to think, okay? So then you're not hovering them, you're not smothering and being smothering or intimidating. You are literally allowing them time to process their own thought processes and then coming back and being empathetic and say, hey, what's going on? Tell me about this situation. Why are you so angry? Having them identify what's causing their anger. Number 4, encourage the use of words to describe their feelings. Most children or adolescents who have had habitual problems regulating aggression are actually very inhibited internally with verbal knowledge or understanding of their feelings. Caregivers need to help them better identify and verbalize how they feel. So that goes back into, I feel embarrassed, I feel hurt, I feel left out, I am afraid, I am hungry, I am sleepy, I don't feel good, this is too loud, I'm overstimulated, I'm disappointed, I'm jealous. There's a lot of things going on that these kiddos need words to help them describe what's going on in their head. And it's our job to be empathetic listeners and then to try to help them describe these things. And sometimes it may require paper and pen. Number 5, setting limits. To prevent the situation from getting worse, it's important to set limits and even take away goodies to help them calm down. It's essential that the child or adolescent understand that you are actually trying to help them, not punish them. Okay, taking away goodies doesn't mean taking away the teddy bear that they sleep with at night. Okay, that only sets them off, makes everything worse. A teddy bear, a blanket, something that is lovey, that is soft and calming that they sleep with, do not take that away. That doesn't help them calm down. Even if they throw it at you, it still doesn't help them calm down. It's essential that we try not to remove things, but we establish that that we would give them back if we had to. So like if they were playing with hard toys or something like that, we would have the ability to give them back at the end of the shift. Like if you lay down and be still at the end of the shift, I'll put them back in your room. But they need to go back in the room. They need to be able to believe you on that. On setting limits, you might set a time frame for them to yell, scream, and holler. I've had older kiddos who've missed out on visitation or their parents didn't show up and they were mad and so they were cussing. Okay, for me to ask them not to cuss and not to throw a fit would be pointless because they're super mad. Okay, so me talking to them about profanity and how that's not a good thing to do would only make the child madder at me. So I can't have that don't cuss conversation with them. All I can do is ask to get all the other smaller ears away from this kid so that kid can finish cussing to calm down. Sometimes cussing can actually help the kid calm down. And so allowing them that opportunity just to vent and get it out there is okay, but putting a boundary on it, like, okay, I'm going to allow you to scream and holler and have a fit, but let's try to limit that to about 5 minutes. And then when you're done, in 5 minutes, we can revisit this. Now, 5 minutes is really a long time. I would really say, a minute. But sometimes with those older kids, you got to give them a little bit more time because they're that frustrated. Again, with setting limits, that's not like trying to take everything away from a kid, like taking away their token or this, that, and the other. Constantly threatening them with taking something away and then you not doing it is also a negative reinforcement to make them continue that behavior because they don't believe you're going to do anything. And number 2, it doesn't make the situation better. When it says on here setting limits and even taking away goodies, we're talking about taking away like candies and things like that are pointless. Or like if a kid is abusing game room time, then you could take away some game room time and things like that. And so, but again, our goal in very bold print, underlined there, is not to punish them. Our goal is to teach them self-control. You can't teach self-control through punishment. You have to teach it through positive reinforcement. That's the only thing that teaches good behavior. Being optimistic and positive is number 6. Caregivers need to be encouraging, giving the child a sense that they have faith in them and their capacity to get through a difficult time. Again, saying, hey, Sarah, I know you're having a rough time. I can see that you're frustrated because you're cussing over there, but you know what? We've got the other kids out of the way. I'm going to give you about 2 or 3 minutes to kind of calm yourself down. Once you're calm, then I would love to hear what's going on with you because I want to help you, and I can't help you if you don't tell me what's going on. And I may not have all the answers. I may not be able to change the situation, but I guarantee you I can listen to you and I can give the proper feedback to the powers of the people who are able to make those decisions, like maybe case managers. The case manager can then transfer that on to the other people who make those choices. And so I may or may not be able to have power to change the outcome of the situation right now, but I definitely have the power to listen to you and to care about what you have to say. That's being optimistic and positive. And letting the child know that you have faith that they can get it together. The big thing is rewarding the change, number 7. As a caregiver, when you see a youth grow, when you notice growth or better management of the child's feelings, let them know how happy you are for them and how good it must feel for them to be in control of themselves and witness those benefits. Now that has to happen frequently and often. Again, like I said, we're not giving the kids candy every time they do something great. We're not giving them a token every time they do something great. These things are on a selected time frame. What we are giving is positive verbal feedback, a smile, a physical smile and a happy face, which is a form of nonverbal praise, and acknowledgement that they have succeeded in controlling their behaviors. Like, man, you got in the shower so fast tonight and you cleaned up. You are a rock star. You know, how easy it is for you just to acknowledge good behavior on them and all the other children who are behaving good as well, not just the children who need improvement, but all of the children who are behaving well, acknowledging their success, even if they are small successes. So how can our staff make a difference? By creating a caring environment. Number one, we have a policy to show compassion towards our residents, to make them feel like they belong, to make sure that their basic needs are met. So making sure that we have fun toys to play with and nice things in our bedroom. It's the little things, like even when a child first arrives, making sure that they have a blanket and a teddy bear or some kind of stuffed animal, a lovey, that they can call their own, because some kiddos come in here with just the clothes on their back when other kiddos have come here with other belongings. And kiddos who've been here longer tend to have more things than kiddos who've been here a short time. Explaining to those new kiddos, hey, I notice I'm bringing you in this room and I'm just giving you this teddy bear and this blanket, but you know, these other kids, you see all the things that they have, they had an opportunity to earn this through positive choices that they make and through being a good team member and a good youth in our building. So in encouraging them to be part of our system. Another one is teamwork. Damages of inconsistency. So when we do not follow policy and procedures, when we do not follow protocol, when we do not follow verbal redirection that a staff administrator have given you on how to handle a kiddo, like keeping our groups separate or giving out tokens only one per shift per day. And so when we abuse those rules and guidelines, the damages of inconsistency are evident because the kids know that you're not going to follow the rules. They know that you're not being an effective staff member. They know that they can push your buttons to the extreme and you will give. You will cave. You will do something to reward them when they shouldn't get a reward. Or you will ignore stuff and let it go when it should have been redirected. Like kiddos just being able to roam free in the building. We don't allow that. We don't allow that. Kids cannot go from one place to the other unmonitored. But if a kiddo is being very nice and being very obedient, but they're also being very sneaky, they could say, hey, I need to go here, and they get into mischief because you didn't follow the rules as a staff member. And that is some of the damages of inconsistency too, is we have to communicate from one staff member to another of what's going on, and two, we all have to follow the same rules. A big thing is healing in relationships with praise and planning. You cannot come on shift and just wing it and just try to have free time the whole time. That never works. You need to plan activities with the kiddos. Know your strengths, know your coworkers' strengths, know what you're good at. You need to plan ahead of time so you know what kind of activities you might want to do with the kiddo during the week and on the weekends. Oftentimes, administrative team members will plan some activities or crafts or things to do with the kiddos, and then we don't know how successful that activity was. And so you didn't report back to us. We don't know how well it went. Or we've planned out a lot of activities and none of them were done. And then you had a lot of conflicts with kiddos because all y'all wanted to do was have free time. Free time is idle time and it does not work well. That's why we have groups. We try to keep kids in groups. We try to have the groups do separate activities to give them space from one another. And the group leaders need to be participating in the activities with the group. So if we're playing a board game, we're all playing a board game. If we're doing outside activities, we're doing outside activities together, and I'm being your biggest fan, your biggest cheerleader. Healing is in that relationship. If I'm just an observer in the group and I'm not giving you praise for doing a good job, and I'm not planning activities, and I'm not planning things for us to do, and we're just going to do free time the whole time, then I'm not being a therapeutic staff making a difference. I'm just clocking in and clocking out for a paycheck, and it's not helping the children. It's not helping my coworkers. I'm not being a good team member. So it is essential that we take the time to make these extra efforts in doing a better job. Our staff have a unique role in the life of our kids. They listen to everything we say. They watch everything we do. So being a good example is very important. Now ask yourself these questions and give an honest answer. As a staff member, do you follow our rules, schedules, and policies? Are you fair and equal with your treatment of each youth? Do you have patience and offer teaching moments for the children? Do you encourage youth to try new things and to face new responsibilities? Do you demonstrate how to keep our shelter organized and clean on your shift? Do you actively present with our youth being part of their group as a leader, not just an observer? Do you try to have a positive attitude and avoid talking negatively about others or events? Do you allow kids to make mistakes without being hypercritical of them? Do you praise the youth who learn to resolve issues or those who stay on task? Do you encourage participation and growth in learning new skills? These questions are essential. And if some of those questions hurt your feelings a little bit, then that may be something that's eye-opening for you and you need to work on them. Because, for instance, like number 7, do you try to have a positive attitude and avoid talking negatively about others or events? If you sit around and talk with your coworkers negatively about other coworkers or about other children, they hear that. They hear everything you say. They absorb it, take it in, and then they don't trust you because you're not being a responsible adult. And they think that you're just going to talk junk about everybody you ever deal with, which is probably the case. So we need to make sure that you're being a good leader, a good responsible leader who wants to let the kiddos know that you're here for them. Like being hypercritical. Oftentimes staff who are hypercritical of other kiddos often see themselves as flawless staff, but I beg to differ. It's staff who actually have a lot of things that they are too flexible on and they don't follow policies and procedures and schedules or equal treatment of our youth. And so those staff who seem to be hypercritical are often the ones who need to work on themselves the most. Being part of a true team can be a rewarding experience. Good team players are required to look for people's strengths. A good team member doesn't put their own agenda before the good of the group. Being on a team is like a game of tug of war. You must all pull together to win the game. Your team will fall apart. And so what damages a team? Staff who give all our effort but do not work in unison with their team. So a staff member who's like, I'm going to do my shift this way and y'all guys are on your own. I've got this group, y'all deal with your group and you're on your own. No, staff members need to be vigilant and be aware of what's going on with their group and other groups at the same time in case they have to be backup or lend a hand. And they need to be emotionally supportive of their coworkers. Things like snack time, meal time, bath time, we can all work in unison to kind of help with these kind of chores, especially clean up the centers, cleaning up outside before it's time to go in. Staff members are not just observers there, they're cleaning up with their group and they are also being part of the team. Another one is staff who hold on to the rope but don't pull. They are team members in name only. They take but do not give. They want all the privileges but no responsibility. So those are staff members who will come in and clock in, but then they disappear. They're playing on their cell phone. They are busy talking to their coworkers and not watching their group, and then their group gets into trouble or gets into conflict, and then other people have to bail them out. And so staff members who are clocking in namesake only but are really not here. And so they are really not helpful. People just kind of hanging onto the rope but not doing any work. So we need our staff members to be active members of our game of tug of war and to put in the same amount of force and strength that we all put into it. Staff who pull in opposite directions. They are rule breakers. They do not follow our order, our schedules. They do not listen to instructions or feedback from their supervisors. And they work against the team and poison the team efforts with dissension. These people are the ones that I hate the administrative team. I hate the job. We don't get any training for this, that, and the other. We've all participated in the same training. We actually have the same required training for everybody. But going to training and then taking in the knowledge and applying it to your job are very many different things. You can actually go to training and learn nothing because you didn't want to learn in the first place. And then you have only yourself to blame. And so as a team member, it's not good to go against the grain. It's not good to be a poisonous staff member and to cause dissension amongst the group. That's not healthy. And we're just not going to take it. We need everyone to be on the same page, and it's all or none in our conditions. Staff members should follow the rules. They should follow the schedules. They should be here on time. They should give 1 token per shift. They should be kind to the children. They should also do the chores that are required of their shift in addition to direct care. They should have to fill out their paperwork like they're supposed to. They should come to training and staff meetings like they're supposed to. There's all these different things as a staff member that we have to do to make us work effectively as a team. No one is excluded from the group. The results of inconsistency. Children are confused. It weakens the team environment. It creates tension and conflict between the adults. It prevents healthy relationships to develop. And it limits kids' opportunity to learn and grow. Notice that rope is hanging on by a thread at the bottom. Inconsistency is breaking the rope that we are pulling so hard on as a team. The children know when staff don't follow the rules and staff who follow the rules. And then it confuses them on which staff member they should align with. It weakens the team environment because staff members become frustrated at one another, and it causes conflict between the adults. And sometimes that conflict can be seen in front of the kiddos through arguments or dissension. Sometimes there's conflicts between the children and the staff because the staff members who want to be friends of the children and not a good positive adult sometimes will allow the children to break the rules, and other staff will have to step in and say that's not how we do things. Then that makes them look like the bad guy for following the rules that should have been followed in the first place. So we should be aware of our inconsistencies and we need to resolve them. For instance, it goes back to something simple like being on your cell phone. If you're on your cell phone and you're not an active group leader and you're observing your kids but not being with your kids, you are being inconsistent. If you're not following the rules and letting the children just run all over the building as they want to and not doing planned activities with the children and just having constant free time with the kiddos all in one room and not separated in groups, you are being inconsistent. It's not productive, and it makes it harder on all of us, and it makes it harder on the kids. How staff make a difference. Healing relationships with praise and planning. How do we do that? By working together as a team. Together, everyone achieves more. Planning ahead is one of the best skills of a direct care staff worker. It builds trust. Planning ahead allows team members to be utilized in achieving our goals. It allows staff to be informed and prepared to take on their role in tasks being completed fully. Planning ahead reduces tension for our staff and our kids not knowing what to expect on shift. It prevents conflicts in routines and improves activities that increases supervision and care. Planning ahead helps staff share ideas on how to work with kids who are more challenging through idea share of what works best. Planning ahead allows our kids to visualize a goal, to work towards common goals for a favored reward, to succeed at something as a group and as an individual when change is needed. Planning ahead comforts children whose lives are chaotic and have mental health issues or trauma-based responses. Kiddos who have had a constant inconsistency in their life need routine, consistency, and planning. So, coming on shift, not just having just chronic free time, knowing to use the game room, knowing to use the gym, knowing to use the playground, knowing to use the art room, knowing what activities you thrive at. Free time is limited. You know that we have set times for everything. There's bath time, there is bedtime, there is lunchtime, there's breakfast time, dinner time, there is visitation time, there's homework time, all these different times of day. We need to also encompass planned activities in those time frames, such as life skills. There's also times for recreation. There's also time for physical fitness, making sure that you kind of encompass more than one thing rather than just free play on center time or just watching a movie. Movies and center time are important, but they are also limited on How often we do those, we don't do those just like on an entire shift. Now it's time to test our knowledge. You should find a completed blank test available for you in the PD room. There are 15 questions. Be sure and put your name at the top and complete your test of your knowledge for this training and turn it in to Ms. Rhonda's office. Thank you for watching. If you have any questions about this training, feel free to contact Sheila, Rhonda, Nicole, or Lisa.